let's talk overlanding gear. Let me preface this video by saying that you don't need any of this gear that I'm going to talk about today just to start overlanding, but I love gear. I think a lot of you out there do too. My name is Roger. You don't care about that. Let's get started. I'm going to show you some of the gear that I use and what I love about some of that gear and what I don't love about some of that gear, because nothing is perfect except for bacon, unless you're vegan or vegetarian, I guess. Do they even make vegan bacon? Hey Siri, if you're newer to overlanding or just looking to get started, go watch this video up here first if you haven't yet. In that video, I talk about the basic necessities just to start overlanding. And I don't want this gear-centric video today to confuse you or give you any hesitations to just start doing it. All right, let's start with the thing that most people new to overlanding seem to be always fascinated by and always seem to want to know more about. That's right, I'm talking about LED light bars. No, I'm just kidding. I'm talking about rooftop tents. I know when I first started learning about overlanding, rooftop tents to me seemed like people's reaction to air fryers during the pandemic.
Designed to cook your favorite foods at the perfect temperature for the perfect time. Set it and walk away for perfect French fries in 18 minutes.
I mean, what are you
Delicious
doing?
air fried.
Buy an air fryer, babe.
What?
I'm gonna go over what I don't like first. The one big thing I hate about rooftop tents in general is when you gotta go pee at night. It's like this big production just to be able to do that. You gotta put on your shoes and grab your flashlight or your headlamp, climb all the way downstairs in the freezing cold, and then have
Tigers in bed.
trying to eat you as you relieve yourself. Oh my, indeed. I'd probably be more worried about those stuffed animals stalking me than real ones. Anyways, I just keep a big empty drink bottle up there now for those occasions, and I'm not gonna show you one because that's just gross. But you kind of get what I'm saying, right? You gotta go downstairs if you forget something, or if your 90-pound giant schnauzer decides to hop in the driver's seat in the middle of the night and sit on the horn and it's pouring rain outside but she won't get off the horn. Yeah, I can't make that stuff up. That really happens. The next thing I don't like is the lack of space compared to most ground tents. If it's just me in the rooftop tent, there's plenty of extra room. But when there's two people up there, there's barely enough room for anything else at all. Thankfully, the GFC is pretty long for people 6 feet tall or less, so you have some room for stuff at your feet. And there are other style rooftop tents that give you a little bit more room, but you're still pretty limited overall. Some wedge style rooftop tents have storage pockets or netting on the ceiling, and I've thought about adding something like that, but it's still tight up there with two people no matter how you use that limited space. So what else about the specific rooftop tent that I have that I don't love? Well, one thing I downright hate about the GFC rooftop tent is the mattress. I've read reviews online where people say the stock mattress is comfortable, but they either sleep on a 30-year-old hand-me-down mattress at home and don't remember what comfortable is, or they were trying to type the word intolerable and got the worst autocorrect ever. To say that the stock 2-inch mattress is uncomfortable is kind of like saying getting a prostate exam is uncomfortable. Maybe I'm just bed bougie, but it's probably a case of a little bit of both. On that very first trip my wife and I ever took with the GFC, we woke up in the morning crying for the chiropractor with backs stiffer than DOM steel tube rock sliders. You were looking for a dirty colloquialism there, weren't you? This ain't that kind of channel. But seriously though, I ditched the stock mattress and put in an Xped Mega Mat Duo, the long and wide version. No, it's not a perfect fit, but I'm okay with that. Yes, it does have to be inflated and deflated, which does add to the setup and teardown time, but a good night's sleep is absolutely worth that extra minute or two to us. To Go Fast Camper's credit, they did come out with their own hybrid air mattress, similar to the Xped one that I have as an optional add-on. The GFC one is a perfect fit, and it works on top of the stock mattress. But I already have the Xped, so I'm just gonna stick with that. Another thing I don't like about the GFC tent, well, to be fair, tents in general, rooftop or not, they all have the same issue, which is condensation. And I'm not just nitpicking here, I'm talking about a very specific condensation scenario. The GFC design doesn't include rain flies. And no, rain doesn't get in the tent when you have everything zipped up tight, but therein lies the problem. You have everything zipped up tight and there's a zero airflow, which means the inside of the tent is gonna get warmer than the outside, and you know how condensation works. One very rainy evening, we woke up early in the morning to what seemed like tropical monsoon season inside the tent. There was literally condensation dripping down on our faces. That's what we woke up to. And it was like 90% humidity up in there. Yeah, that was the same day the dog was honking the horn. Ah, memories. There are a couple companies that make aftermarket doohickeys that turn the GFC doors into a rain fly. Like this Gzilla Designs one, and I definitely appreciate the ingenuity. However, it seems like it would leave the sides exposed quite a bit in windy, rainy conditions. But I think I'm gonna get them anyways just to experiment and see how well they work. Or I might try to make something for the little triangular windows myself. One good thing about the GFC when you do get condensation is that the floor and the ceiling don't have any fabric, so you can just wipe everything down. But despite all the negatives I just talked about, I still love the GFC Rooftop Tent overall. Why? Well, it sure beats sleeping on the ground in my opinion. For one, I just feel safer being up there. It might be a misguided sense of safety since black bears can stand up to 7 feet tall. But it's a good height for most other animals. But yeah, I just prefer being off the ground, and a chilly evening seems a heck of a lot less chilly to me when I'm not laying on the ground. Also, I just don't like setting up and breaking down a ground tent and dealing with the dirty tarp under it or having to stake everything down. I chose the GFC for a number of reasons. I like the idea of the hard shell wedge style tent for ease of setup and takedown, and I looked at several different brands before deciding. What ultimately attracted me to the GFC was that it's made right here in the US. Not that I buy everything US made, nor do I think you even can nowadays, but it's comforting to know that we're still able to manufacture high quality, top-notch products here when we want to. Anyways, this tent is some kind of design and engineering marvel. You'll notice that there are no exposed ugly hinges on the front of the tent, and then you start wondering how the heck they did that. The entire tent has some mind-boggling machine parts everywhere you look, all made by good old hardworking Americans right in Montana. When I compared it to similar tents by other brands, it made some of those other tents look like junior high metal shop projects with ugly hardware store looking hinges. Every single part on the GFC can be replaced, and I'm not talking about just the gas struts. I mean everything. If one day some kamikaze bird decides to dive bomb into my tent fabric and make a big hole, or if it manages to smash up the honeycomb composite roof, they can all be replaced. But the real kicker for me was that the GFC isn't really all that much more expensive than the overseas manufactured similar tents. Someone out there is probably going to say that made in the USA and some of the other things I like about the GFC is merely justification for spending the extra coin over a similar but less expensive rooftop tent, or that I'm sponsored. I only have like 700 subs as of the making of this video, so ain't no one sponsoring me. Also, try telling me that when you get rear-ended on the highway, your rooftop tent goes flying off your truck, lands on its roof, goes sliding down the highway, but gets repaired back to 100%. Yeah, that's a true story. Look it up right here on YouTube. Okay, it was a camper, but the tent part is basically the same thing, just without the removable floor of the camper version, and GFC was able to replace all of the damaged parts. Yes, at a cost of course, but you try to get an overseas mass-produced rebranded by several sellers, even though it's the same thing rooftop tent brand, to A, get parts, and then B, perform the repairs for you. On top of all that, GFC pays their people a livable wage. Even if you never buy anything from them, you gotta respect that. Okay, fine. I'm a total GFC fanboy. Guilty as charged. Well, we're still on the topic of rooftop tents. If you use one or you sleep in the back of your rig, you're gonna know what I'm talking about here. Leveling. And I'm not talking about your World of Warcraft team digging level 70. I'm talking about leveling your rig.
Let's level, baby.
I don't think anyone enjoys sleeping at odd angles. I mean, when you're pointed like downhill or uphill a little bit, it's tolerable. But when you're leaning to one side or the other, it's not so enjoyable.
I'm not enjoying this.
I love the leveling devices that I have. And I bet you've seen those leveling blocks before. You know, the ones that resemble giant Lego pieces. I guess they're really more like Duplo blocks, if you remember those oversized Legos, designed for kids like me who were always trying to put the square peg into the round hole while eating an amuse-bouche of school paste and using their sleeve as a hanky. And I don't know if they teach arithmetic like this anymore in kindergarten, but as a child, I would often ponder why some nameless unknown person took one of my 3 apples. Who cares how many apples I have left? Someone stole one of my apples. I don't even like apples that much, but it's my apple and I want it back. So off topic. The great thing is that these leveling thingies can double as wheel chocks too. I mostly just use rocks for leveling when it's convenient to do so, but I carry these just in case there aren't any rocks handy. Otherwise, it's going to be a whole lot more of,
I'm not enjoying this.
Other than the X-Bed mattress, a couple of small add-ons that I've done to the tent is running power up there with a USB hub, and I added some LED lighting as well. The lights are hardcore lighting light bars. They come in a few different sizes, are dimmable, and have a white and orange setting. The orange setting does a pretty good job of not attracting so many bugs. Oh, I also added grab handles on the back and a pad eye so that I can hook a rope to it to make it easier to close the tent. GFC designed it so that you can just pull on the fabric to close it, but doing it this way just makes me feel better about not tugging on the tent fabric. Pillows are like super subjective, and some people get pretty picky about their pillows. Ask my wife.
What was that?
Nothing, just doing the video. She has yet to settle on a dedicated camping pillow. I use this Nemo inflatable one, but I'm not sure yet if this is the one pillow to rule them all. Yeah, I'm pretty pillow picky too, alright? I would just use the pillow I normally use at home, but it takes up a lot of space, and if you've never tried using memory foam in temperatures under 40 degrees Fahrenheit, it feels more like rubber gym flooring tile than foam. If any of you have a good suggestion for a camping-sized pillow, leave a comment for being the missus.
Propane and propane accessories.
Hey, thanks for the intro, Hank. In my last video about how to start overlanding, I showed you the 2 propane tanks that I use, a 6-pounder for short trips and a 20-pounder for longer trips. In addition to carrying one of those 2 tanks on a trip, I also carry a 1-pound propane bottle as backup. Before I get into propane stoves, let's talk about another
propane accessory.
We have a propane fire pit for when there's fire restrictions. The Camp Chef one we use works just fine, but it does consume quite a bit of propane. At full blast, which is 55,000 BTU per hour on that fire pit, a 20-pound tank has roughly 430,000 BTU. Divide that by 20, so that's 21,500 BTU per pound. That means it'll burn 2.5 pounds of propane per hour. So turn that sucker down. The one thing that I really don't like about this fire pit is the amount of space it takes up due to its sheer size and awkward shape. From what I've read and heard, those ammo box style fire pits don't feel as hot as mine, but they sure are more space friendly and easier to pack. And this one says 280,000 BTU, so I don't know about those not as hot feeling reviews. Here's my Camp Chef compact fire ring next to a 20-pound LPG tank for size reference, and then compare that to a 50 cal ammo box on top of it. But either way, I'll stick to the one we have for now. Okay, now cooking stuff. In that last video, I showed a couple items that I didn't really talk about, so let's get into those right now. First, the stove. I use a Camp Chef Everest, and it works great. When I was shopping for stoves, I saw that a bunch of overlanders that are on YouTube use a brand called Partner Steel, and they make a line of stoves called the Cook Partner stoves. They look nice and all, but when I went to look them up and saw the price, I had serious sticker shock. I thought, whoa bro, why are these stoves so expensive? They don't even have a piezo igniter on them. I promptly bought the Camp Chef Everest that was less than half the price of the Cook Partner. Then one day, I'm watching YouTube and I see a guy disassemble a Cook Partner stove to clean it out, and not only does the grill come out like every other stove, right, but the burners come out too, which really lets you get in there and clean that sucker out, and that's a pretty neat trick. But the Camp Chef has been good to us overall, and I have no real complaints. If it ever breaks, I'll look at the Cook Partners again. I also have this little UCO flat pack portable grill. It takes up almost no room, and it's just large enough for a couple people. There's not much to really dislike about any of the stuff that I cook on, so let's get to the next topic, cookware. Yes, you can totally just use your cookware that you have at home, but I don't want to have to remember to pack everything from the kitchen every time, so I have dedicated cookware for overlanding. The fry pans we use are these GSI Bugaboo fry pans, and they come in multiple sizes. Here's the 10-inch version and the 12-inch version, and like a smaller 8-inch version too. And I like these a lot because the handles fold in, and then I sandwich a microfiber towel in between them just so they don't get scratched up, and they nest together to save you a little bit of space, so that's pretty neat. And they are non-stick, so you do have to take care of them a little bit. They've held up for us. Just make sure, like any other non-stick pan, that you're not using any metal utensils, or else not this YouTube Roger, but Uncle Roger is gonna get on your case.
Hiya, why you use metal utensil on non-stick pan? Hiya.
This pot right here is made by Sea to Summit. It's super lightweight and the handle folds in. It holds about 125 fluid ounces or 3.7 liters, so pretty decent size for camping. And in that last video, I showed you the little Primus kettle that we use. This one holds about 30 ounces or 0.9 liters, and it's big enough for 2 decent sized cups of coffee in the morning. Oh, speaking of coffee, or as I like to call it, the most important meal of the day, we just do a simple pour over at camp, and we use these silicone pour over drippers with good old paper filters. These are just easy to use and they're easy to clean. And I'm not hardcore enough to grind my own beans at camp, so we just buy pre-ground coffee. And I know everyone's got their own favorite brand and favorite blend, but if you've never tried Death Wish, you got it. There are very few coffees that I willingly drink black, and this is my go-to. A couple other small things that you may not even think about bringing or buying for camping are silicone pot holders. They're great for a lot of things. These squeeze bottles are super handy for your cooking oils. And chip clips. I never remember to bring these. I'm gonna have to remember to actually put them on the checklist, but I'm always looking for these at camp when we're snacking. Oh, not cookware, but kitchen related. This paper towel holder, oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm totally getting excited over a paper towel holder, but for real, oh my gosh. It's magnetic, so just stick it to anywhere with ferrous metal and you got a roll of paper towels that won't unroll itself in the wind and won't roll away because it can't fall over. Winner, winner, chicken dinner. Okay, now fridges. Game changers. Bags of ice and soggy food. I will not miss you. There are so many different brands, and I did a bunch of research before I finally bought a fridge. From everything I've read, heard, and seen, stick with the big name brands like Dometic, ARB, Engel, Snowmaster, and National Luna, for example. I ended up with a National Luna 52-liter Legacy for a couple of reasons. The first and foremost is dimensions. This model gives me the most capacity with the footprint size I need for my rig and future drawer system plans. I went back and forth for a while between the one I ended up getting and an ARB model and a Dometic model, but in the end, that National Luna's footprint just made a whole lot more sense for my needs. So the second reason I chose National Luna over those other brands, even though they have great reputations too, is because National Luna was born in South Africa, and they developed their original line of refrigerators based on World Health Organization specifications on transporting refrigerated medicines across the harsh landscape and environment of Africa. So if it's good enough for that purpose, it's more than good enough for my meager exploits. Other than sticking with the well-known brands, the only other tip I can offer you guys on fridges is to keep it running, even if you're not out on an adventure. I read in a forum one time that somebody's fridge compressor died, and when they went to go get it repaired, the repair guy told them, like, keep it running all the time, because if you leave it off for prolonged periods, the oil in that compressor settles to the bottom, and then there's like a lot of wear and tear starting it back up. That makes a whole lot of sense in my brain, so that's what I've been doing with my fridge. If you've heard or read anything differently, leave a comment for me below. I'll tell you guys how I power that fridge and everything else I use later on in the video, so be sure to stick around until the end. One of the absolute best pieces of gear that we have is our awning. They're great for rain and for shade, and if you overland several times a year, I'd consider it a must-have. There are quite a few brands and different styles of awnings out there, from the OG rollout 2-leg kind to the 270-degree freestanding awnings like the one I have. They all have their advantages and disadvantages. The 270 awnings are super fast to set up, but they are pretty heavy, and they don't work with every rooftop tent, nor do they work with every vehicle for that matter. Toyota 4Runners and some other vehicles have hatches that open upwards. Generally, this type of hatch doesn't play nicely with 270-degree awnings. My hatch doesn't fully open when the awning is deployed, but it opens up enough that I don't have to really duck under the hatch. I wanted a 270 style awning for maximum coverage, so I was willing to make that headroom sacrifice. Another tricky part to installing that 270 awning that I have onto my 4Runner was the GFC rooftop tent itself. The latch design of the GFC just isn't 270 awning friendly. There is a company out there called Kinsman Hardware, and they make a 270 awning with a special bracket that's designed to work with the GFC rooftop tent and the camper version right out of the box. But it's a little pricey. They look like they would last a lifetime, and it's handmade by one dude in the US, but it's almost $1,000 more than the one I use, which is the Big Country 4x4 ostrich wing awning. They come in two sizes, and I have the larger one that provides 120 square feet of coverage. Yeah, it's pretty big. When stowed away, this thing measures 109 inches in length, so don't try to mount this thing on a smaller rig, because it would probably look like you're trying to joust against all the other rigs or something.
It's called a lance. Hello?
It comes with an LED light strip and one support leg for when it gets windy. If it gets really crazy windy, you can tie it down in every corner too. It also has this little tiny leg at the top here to help shed water. And they make a zip-on wall kit for it as well. I love everything about this awning except for when it came to mounting it. And to be perfectly honest, I didn't even think about this stuff when I ordered it. When it got here, it was a head scratcher for sure. It's not just a simple matter of bolting it up to the side of a GFC rooftop tent or camper, because all of the weight is on the pivot point when you deploy and put away the awning. And with the GFC rear latch design, you can't just bolt up the pivot point to the side of the tent. I ended up fabbing, and I'm using the term fabbing very loosely here, this monstrosity of a bracket. I don't know how to weld, so I drilled holes and bolted everything together using steel angle, steel plate, steel square tube, and a GFC universal mounting bracket. It looks like I stole part of the Golden Gate Bridge and painted it black. But it definitely works, and it's probably over-designed in terms of strength. I mean, it'll take my entire body weight for no good reason. Maybe one day I'll learn how to weld and make an aluminum bracket that looks a whole lot nicer and definitely will weigh a heck of a lot less than that monster. If I'd known about all those mounting headaches before ordering the ostrich wing, I probably would have gotten the Kinsman instead. But being that everything's all mounted securely now, I have no real regrets because I got that extra 35 square feet of coverage with the ostrich wing. I talked about emergency satellite communication devices last time and showed you this Garmin InReach Mini. There are a few brands that make similar devices now. Listen, just get one if you're going to be venturing off-grid, because that is a precaution that's definitely worth taking. Now, radio communications. Yes, I know my name is Roger, okay?
Roger, Roger. Roger, Roger. Roger, Roger.
Oh, how that never gets old. Alright, so radio comms. Making a phone call while you're out on the trail or even the highway is just a horrible way of trying to communicate with everybody in your convoy. Plus, you don't even have signal a lot of the time when you're overlanding. Even if you only have one other vehicle in your group, it's just way faster to hit the button on the radio and start talking than to have to dial them on your cell phone even when you do have signal.
Okay, bye.
Not long ago, CBs were the de facto standard, but people seem to be transitioning towards GMRS now. General Mobile Radio Service, GMRS for short, seems to be dominating the off-road market right now, and there's several good reasons why. With GMRS, voices just sound a lot more clear and with less static. Generally speaking, you get better range, and you get to use up to 50 watts of power instead of only 4 watts with CB. Oh, also, you get to use privacy codes too. The only disadvantage to GMRS is the $35 licensing fee, but it lasts for 10 years and it covers your entire household. I use a Midland MXT 275 in my rig and a Midland GXT 1000G handheld when I'm not in the truck. The MXT 275 is 15 watts, and I'm not going to comment on the range because there are just too many factors that affect range, but it's more than adequate for my needs. I chose the MXT 275 model because all the controls are right on the mic handset so that I could tuck the main unit down there. Midland released the MXT 575 sometime after I bought the 275, and that one has the full 50 watts of power. There are other brands out there, but Midland makes things super easy for the end user, and radios aren't really something that I nerd out over, so I just stick with their stuff. What I do kind of nerd out over though is preparedness, and no, I don't have a zombie apocalypse bunker, mostly because I can't afford one, but I do like to be prepared for Murphy and his damn law. Not right now, bro. I'm trying to make a video. I carry quite a lot of tools in the event I need to do a ghetto trail fix or just tighten something up. I don't currently carry any vehicle spare parts because I just don't do any technical trails right now. I'll talk more about that topic when I get to my gear wish list later. But if, say, a tire rod went out while I was on the trail...
Too soon, Roger. Too soon.
I prefer to have the ability to have someone in my convoy help give me a lift to buy parts and to do the work myself out on the trails than to have to pay for an astronomically expensive off-road recovery and a tow and then have to find a local shop to do the repairs for me. I carry way too many tools to cover this video, but my best tip to you is to carry the tools that you need for your particular vehicle. And what I mean by that is if your car doesn't need an 11/16 wrench, then don't carry an 11/16 wrench. Save that space and wait for something you might actually use. If any of you are interested in the tools that I do carry, then leave a comment for me below and maybe I'll do a dedicated video on that topic. Have a way to jack up your vehicle when you need to. And I'm not talking about that crappy scissor jack your vehicle probably came with. I am positive all of you have seen farm jacks before. Most people call them high lifts because that's the popular brand. Kind of like how nobody says cola. You either order a Coke or a Pepsi, right? I don't own one. Maybe I will someday, but I just carry a 6-ton bottle jack for now, which is adequate for my needs. There's a company called Safe Jack that makes extensions and other accessories to make a bottle jack even more versatile. I think a lot of off-roaders don't carry a jack stand, but if you've got the room to carry one, it's obviously a lot safer to use one than not. Along with tool-related stuff, let's talk recovery gear. I have a pretty limited set of recovery gear right now, again, due to not doing any technical trails right now, but I do have a pair of Max Tracks on a pretty awesome mount. Check this thing out. This is the Expedition Essentials Recovery Board Quick Mount, and it's pure genius. Forget that lighting up 4 pins dealio. They make a 4-board version too. I also carry a snatch strap, a soft shackle, and a D-ring just in case I or someone else needs a tug, and I haven't had to use any of those yet. You've probably heard of airing down tires for off-roading before, and here's what I currently use for that. This is a RA86 portable compressor, and I've had this thing longer than I've had 4-wheel drive vehicles. It works, eventually. It wasn't really designed for tires this size, and I mean, these are only 33s. It was really meant for normal passenger car street tires, so it does the work just really slowly, especially at higher elevation. When we were airing up in Colorado at an elevation of about 9,000 feet or so, I could have written a 300-page novel by the time we were done airing up both vehicles. Okay, a crappy nobody wants to read novel, and I'm totally over-exaggerating, but yeah, it took like 45 minutes. More on this topic when I get to my future plans list. The one good thing about the 88P is that it has a 100% duty cycle, so it can just keep chugging along, or I guess it's more like sipping along. I use that compressor with a Moreflate 4-way tire kit, which lets me inflate or deflate all 4 tires at once, and it equalizes the pressure in all 4 tires too. And since we're talking tires, it's always a great idea to carry a tire plug kit and these patches by Glue Tread that are made for sidewall repairs. I haven't had to use the Glue Tread kit yet, but man, that tire plug kit, I've had to use that numerous times, just never on my own rig. In the other video, I also talked about fire extinguishers and first aid kits. And for now, I have one of those run-of-the-mill little fire extinguishers that pretty much everybody has, but I do plan on getting an Element fire extinguisher because it has so many benefits over the old school kind. Plus, a viewer commented on that video with his own personal experience with the Element fire extinguisher where he put out a gasoline fire in seconds. Thank you for sharing that story with me, Dennis. Sold. Take my money. And for first aid, just spend the coin and buy a decent kit, not something from like a CVS or whatever. Carrying a tourniquet or 2 is always a good idea. Those can save someone's life. I have trauma shears, some wound sealer powder. These wound closures kind of work like stitches. I also carry isopropyl alcohol, burn gel, and a first aid antibacterial spray. One thing you may not immediately think of if you're going to be adventuring in higher altitudes is carrying oxygen with you. I brought one of these with us to Colorado and it came in pretty handy. I'll tell that story one of these days. But it did make me feel like Mel Brooks in Spaceballs, if you remember that scene. Getting old. Symptoms may include nostalgia. I think you should always carry some kind of fire starting tool when you're camping or overlanding, just in case of emergencies and you need to start a fire, or maybe the piezo igniter on your stove breaks on you. And since I already carry isobutane canisters, I have this refillable lighter by Soto. It even extends. And as a backup, I always carry a ferro rod too. Ooh, sparkly. And just to make your life easier in case you do like starting campfires or like an emergency situation, like I said, I carry a couple fatwood sticks and this fire starter material called a Blackbeard fire starter. It's kind of like a fire plug. It'll start a fire if it's wet too, so that's pretty cool. Just a quick public service announcement for the good of the outdoors community. If you're gonna start a campfire, know how to put it out properly. It's really hard to count the number of times I've seen people riding the struggle bus when it comes to putting out their own campfire.
I start fire.
One time I saw somebody running through the campground screaming and hollering looking for a fire extinguisher, and I go over there and I help get it under control in under a minute with this $10 Harbor Freight shovel. Seriously, this thing is only $10. Like, if you don't have a shovel, go buy a $10 shovel at Harbor Freight, for crying out loud, and stop setting all the places we all like to go on fire. Rant over. So here's something that's relevant for anybody that goes camping or overlanding: chairs. Everyone and their mom seems like they use a Helinox chair, and for a good reason. They are pretty comfortable for a lounging, lean back kind of a chair. This one's my wife's, and it's the beach chair version. I've avoided getting a Helinox chair so far because I'm just lazy, and I don't want to have to deal with the whole setup and the playing with the aluminum nunchucks action. And then the struggling to pull the fabric over the aluminum nunchucks action. Yeah, I'm completely over dramatizing the whole thing, but if I wanted to do chores, I would just stay at home. And I don't want to clean the damn gutters.
Just do it!
I saw this brand called Click, and it looked like their chairs are convenient to use and packed down small, so I got some, and they are that. They are small and convenient to use, but comfortable, they are not. At least not in my opinion. Look, I'm not a big dude. I'm 5'10" and $160. This is me sitting in a Click chair. I don't know if I got some weird prototype kids version or what, but this thing is pretty small feeling. And I know it's super subjective, but my wife's Helinox is way more cozy. I think I might like that Frontrunner expander chair because the seating position looks more upright for my middle-aged back. And it's not a space hog by any means, but it doesn't exactly fold down that small because the space in my rig is pretty limited when it's fully loaded. I just saw that Helinox makes this cafe chair that has a more upright seating position, so that might fit the bill. If any of you have experience with that cafe chair or any camping chair that packs down small and has a more upright seating position, leave a comment for me. My back will thank you. I think it's pretty hard to argue against needing some sort of lighting at camp after the sun goes down, and there are a ton of camp lighting options nowadays. I think old school fuel lanterns have this cool factor and provide this ambiance that you just can't capture with LED lighting. But with that being said, I don't own one. It's hard to beat the pure light output of modern LED lighting. So let's start with flashlights. Hey buddy, I have way too many flashlights, ranging from teeny tiny to big floody behemoth. But the one I always reach for when I'm overlanding, camping, or even when I'm walking the dogs at home is this Olight Warrior Mini 2. Hey, I'll brand myself as a tactical mall ninja here for using a tactical light, but it's the best EDC-able flashlight that I've found so far. Those new flatter style flashlights are gaining popularity for EDC, but this good old tube style one is plenty pocketable for me. So the reason I like this light so much is because it has both a tail switch and the side switch. And with a little bit of bungee cord, and you can do the bungee cord thing with almost any flashlight, it's always on your hand, won't fall off. You can still grab stuff with this hand. And with this particular light, the tail switch gives me momentary access to a max mode and to a momentary strobe mode. And without moving my hand at all, my pinky can hit the side switch for constant output in all of the light modes. All right, a little less gear geeky is this Claymore Heady Plus headlamp that I have here. And it's probably the most versatile headlamp I found so far. You probably know headlamps are like hella useful at camp. And the reason I like this one is because it has so many different modes. Let me show you. So it's got a narrow beam and then a wide beam, combo beam, a diffused red light for protecting your night vision at camp, and a diffused white light. And it also has a couple other tricks up its sleeve, which are this little hook so you can hang it up to use, and then a 1/4-20 thread socket on the back so you can hook it up to your camera gear too. So super versatile, my favorite headlamp that I found so far. It's sweet. And now, vehicle mounted camp lighting. I don't use any sort of lanterns because I have some no-name brand LED lights mounted on the hatch, and they're bright enough for lighting up the rear area of the rig at night for cooking, hanging out, whatever. I also have Baja Designs rock lights mounted in the Sherpa Equipment Company roof rack for side lighting. Sherpa makes special mounts for these rock lights that tuck into the sides of the rack. Again, these offer plenty of lighting at night for doing whatever camping stuff. I have those rock lights hooked up to a wireless remote. I had them on a Bluetooth relay switch before, but it wasn't reliable, and this less expensive remote switch has been flawless. And it's way faster grabbing this remote and hitting the switch than loading up an app on my phone and waiting for the Bluetooth to reconnect. The switch comes with 2 remotes, so I keep one up in the tent in case something goes bump in the night, and I leave the other one here in the truck. Both the roof rack lights and the hatch lights run off the vehicle's main battery. And those lights don't draw that much power, but either way, I'm not really worried about having to run them for several hours a night because first, I upgraded from the standard lead acid battery to an AGM battery. And secondly, I have this 80-watt solar panel on the hood here for trickle charging the AGM battery. So as long as there's sun, I'll basically never run into a dead battery situation. The solar panel is made by Lensun Solar, and they package it either with or without this waterproof MPPT solar charge controller. For powering and charging everything else, like the fridge or the lights on the awning in the privacy tent or that USB hub up in the rooftop tent or like whatever else I need to charge, I use this Blue Eddy AC200 Max power station. There are some great videos here on YouTube that review the performance and all the details on this thing, so I'm not going to go into depth on this piece of gear in this video. If you're not familiar with these power stations, it's basically just a giant battery with a bunch of outlets on it and different ways to recharge it. If you do know about these things, the Blue Eddy model I have has a 2000 watt inverter, 2048 watt hours of total power, and it'll take up to 900 watts in solar input.
I have 2 100-watt solar panels on top of the tent.
It's got 2 charging inputs, so for my setup, while I'm driving, it can be charging from the vehicle's alternator and from the solar panels at the same time. And of course, you can just plug it into an AC outlet to charge it up as well if you need to. And it's also expandable, so you could have up to 8,192 watt hours of total power with 2 of their extension batteries if you really needed it for some reason. I mean, that's like emergency home backup status. Yeah, this thing is like way overkill for my current needs. And I thought about doing like your normal like dual battery on board setup on the rig, but I didn't want to have to piece together my own system and have to figure all that stuff out or buy like a way too expensive for me Red Arc setup. And that Red Arc stuff looks super sweet, but it's like way too powerful for me, and there's a bunch of features on them that I'll never use on my current rig. As long as I've got the ability to power a rice cooker on those long trips, I'm good. What? I'm Asian and I needs my rice, okay? All right, this video is getting long, so let's get to future plans and wish list items, not in any particular order. My 4Runner doesn't have the factory Toyota rear electronic differential locker. If you don't know what that is, it's basically a device that helps you maintain traction in situations where you lose traction, particularly when you have one rear tire off the ground. It would take a while to explain the mechanics of what it actually does, so if you're curious, I'll leave a link to another video down in the description below that does a way better job of explaining it than I ever could. Anyways, with no rear e-locker and having open diffs front and rear, I tend to stay away from trails that are known to require lockers. You astute viewers out there who've seen any of my other videos have probably noticed that I don't have a winch either. So I can't even pull rope to recover myself right now. To me, going on a trail where I know I'm gonna get stuck and I don't have lockers and I don't have a winch would be like trying to do your taxes on the paper forms for the adventurous experience. I mean, why do that to yourself? So glutton for punishment trails or moderate but still have a good time trails? I'll take moderate but still have a good time trails for 1,000, Alex. That is, until I add lockers and a winch. So I do plan to add front and rear lockers sometime in the future, and I'm kind of leaning toward the Harrop e-lockers because installation would just be a lot more straightforward and simpler without having to run air lines or having an onboard air compressor. Also, I don't ever plan to do any hardcore wheeling in this rig. Maybe I'll change my mind and just go with ARB air lockers, and with lockers comes re-gearing because the discs are going to be disassembled already anyways. I know I only run 33s right now, but they are dang heavy 33s, and I do plan to tub the firewall and go 35s in the future. So I'm thinking 529 gears, but I do a lot of highway driving to get to places. Everything I ever read always says go with 529s when you're running 35s, but maybe 488s would be better in my situation. I don't really know. I guess more research needed. Front and rear bumpers are on the list as well because I would feel a whole lot cozier having a winch and a spare tire. Full skid plates, maybe later down the road. And to kind of wrap up vehicle related stuff, supercharger. And you Toyota homies out there probably know what I'm talking about, at least with the older Toyota trucks. My rig is slow. It was slow when it was stock. It's even slower now with stock 410 gearing with 68 plus pound 33-inch tires. That's as heavy as some 35s. And then you got all the overlanding weight, plus my wife and 2 dogs. My poor 4Runner probably feels like one of those motorcycles in Southeast Asia. You know, overworked and underappreciated like most of you good folks out there. I think my truck deserves a promotion, and that'll come in the form of a Magnuson supercharger in the future.
If any of you have any experience with 3rd Gen 400 gearing, lockers, or the supercharger, let me know your thoughts in the comments below.
All right, back to the more like universal overlanding camping kind of gear. If you've seen any of my other videos, you probably know that I'm a total wuss with chilly weather. Well, chilly for us because, you know, we're from California. Look at us. It's not even cold out and we're bundled up like it's like freezing or something because we're California weather wussies. And it's kind of like super coincidence that I'm filming this segment of the video right now because somebody from northern Alberta just left a comment for me, and I can't even imagine like being out there, like the temperatures that he was saying. Like I would die for sure. Stupid temperate California weather ruined me. I mean, there's plenty of other like actual stupid things about California, but I'd be ranting on for days. Back to the topic. You've probably heard of diesel heaters before, but there's propane heaters also. And I'm not talking about those Mr. Buddy heaters. These are propane heaters that work just like the diesel ones. And I already carry around propane for stuff anyway, so I'd rather do that than have to carry around an extra container of diesel fuel. Yeah, Webasto makes a gasoline heater, but that would either require hard mounting it somewhere inside my vehicle or fabricating some kind of weatherproof case. And that's a lot of work when Propex makes the HS2211 propane furnace. These are made for exterior use, so all you need is a temporary place to mount it when you are using it. And I'm thinking about moving that Rotopax off the side of my truck and putting that there when I do need to use a heater. I've also read that the Propex furnace is a lot less finicky than diesel heaters at higher elevation. Having that Propex heater is going to allow a weather wuss like me to actually do some winterlanding and snowverlanding without being completely miserable in the cold. Some of you may have seen the privacy tent on my rig in past videos that we use for changing and going number 2. Well, it's really made for showering, but I don't have a hot shower setup right now. There are a bunch of different ones out there already, but none of them have really stood out to me and said, buy me. I've been considering the Mr. Heater Boss Series one because I like that form factor with the water tap in addition to the sprayer hose. If you guys have a suggestion on a hot shower setup that's worked really well for you, leave a comment for me below. You remember the way too slow portable air compressor that I talked about earlier? Yeah, that needs to go. Everyone always recommends the ARB twin compressor, but it's expensive. Several people have been reporting great results with this Napa air compressor that is very attractively priced, but it's like permanently not in stock status. And then I've seen this EasyFlate one that looks like the same exact thing as the Napa one for $100 more. So if any of you have any input on that Napa compressor or the EasyFlate one or something similar to that that's reasonably priced, leave a comment for me because I really don't want to drop $6 and change on that ARB one. Wow, way longer of a video than I thought it was going to be or ever intended it to be. So much for brevity. Half of you are probably asleep on your couch right now, and if so, enjoy your nap, courtesy of me. As always, thank you all so much for watching, commenting, and subscribing. I hope you'll join me for the next one, which is going to be all about overland trip planning and using Gaia GPS. I'm calling it Overland Trip Planning 101. What's your best practice when it comes to overland trip planning? Leave a comment for me below, and if it's something I never thought of, I'll try to include it in the next video so we can share it with everyone. While you're out adventuring, always remember, destinations don't matter, the journey matters. This is Roger, over and out. Hit that thumbs up, share the video with a friend, subscribe up here, and my dog's knocking on the door.